Americans spent over $152 billion on their pets last year, and the single biggest chunk of that money, $66 billion, went to pet food. But in 2025, multiple investigations revealed something the industry has spent decades hiding. The premium kibble you pay $60 a bag for and the cheap stuff on the bottom shelf at the grocery store are often manufactured in the same factory, using the same base ingredients by the same corporation. We are going to expose the engineering of this illusion, show you exactly how two companies have rigged a $66 billion market, and reveal the three things you should actually look for before you ever buy another bag of pet food. If you have ever walked down the pet food aisle at your local store, you probably felt like you were looking at a competitive marketplace. You see Royal Canin, IAMS, Pedigree, Eukanuba, Nutro, and Acana. Then on another shelf, you see Purina Pro Plan, Merrick, Fancy Feast, Friskies, and Castor and Pollux. You assume these are all different companies fighting to build a better product for your dog or cat. That is an illusion. The reality is that two massive corporations control approximately 70% of the entire pet food market in the United States. Mars Petcare, the candy company behind Snickers and M&M's, owns nearly 50 pet food brands. Nestlé Purina, the Swiss corporation behind Nescafé coffee and Stouffer's frozen meals, owns more than 30. Between them, they pull in over $44 billion a year just from pet food. These are not pet companies. These are multinational food conglomerates that figured out pet owners will pay a premium price for a product that costs almost nothing to manufacture. When you buy a bag of Royal Canin for $58, you are not buying from a team of veterinary scientists in a white lab. You are buying from Mars Incorporated, a privately held candy empire with an estimated family fortune of $117 billion. When you buy Merrick, a brand that markets itself with images of wholesome, small-batch cooking, you are buying from Nestlé, the largest food corporation on the planet. The brand identity is a costume. The corporation underneath is the same one that sells you Nescafé and DiGiorno frozen pizza, and here is the detail that should make your stomach turn. Many of these supposedly competing brands do not even have their own factories. The dirty secret of the pet food industry is a business model called co-manufacturing. This means that dozens of brands you think are independent are actually produced in the same third-party facility on the same production lines using the same pool of commodity ingredients. In 2007, a Canadian company called Menu Foods was making wet food for nearly 100 different brand names, including products from Hills, Nestlé Purina, Mars, IAMS, and Procter & Gamble. These were brands positioned at every price point from bargain to super premium, and they were all coming out of the same plants in Kansas and New Jersey. Nobody knew this until disaster struck. Chinese suppliers had been adding an industrial chemical called melamine to wheat gluten. Melamine is used to manufacture plastics and countertops. The suppliers were spiking the ingredient because melamine is rich in nitrogen, and the standard protein test used by the pet food industry measures nitrogen content, not actual protein. By inflating the nitrogen reading, the suppliers could sell a cheap, adulterated product that passed quality control. The melamine reacted with another contaminant called cyanuric acid inside the bodies of dogs and cats, forming crystals that destroyed their kidneys. The Food and Drug Administration received over 18,000 consumer complaints. Veterinary organizations documented hundreds of confirmed deaths from kidney failure, and the actual toll is believed to be in the thousands. Over 60 million cans and pouches were recalled across more than 180 brands, and the American company that imported the contaminated ingredients from China was fined just $35,000. But here is what should keep you up at night. The fundamental system that allowed the 2007 disaster has not changed. Co-manufacturing is still the dominant production model. Melamine testing is still not mandatory in pet food, even though it was immediately made mandatory for human baby formula after a similar scandal in China in 2008. Diamond Pet Foods, one of the largest co-packers in the country, has had multiple recalls affecting brands across its entire client list simultaneously because a single contamination event at one facility can ripple through dozens of supposedly independent product lines. The illusion of brand diversity is not just a marketing trick. It is a safety liability, and the system that is supposed to protect you from all of this is even more broken than you think. The pet food industry operates under a regulatory framework that most consumers would find shocking if they understood it. Your dog's food is not regulated as food, it is regulated as animal feed. The Food and Drug Administration technically oversees pet food, but in practice, the agency delegates most of that responsibility to a voluntary organization called the Association of American Feed Control Officials, or AAFCO. AAFCO is not a government agency. It has no enforcement power. It does not approve or test pet foods, and its committees include representatives from the very corporations it is supposed to oversee. What AAFCO does control is the language on the label, and that language is where the real deception happens. There is a system of naming rules that most pet owners have never heard of, and the industry relies on your ignorance. If a product is called beef dog food, it must contain at least 95% beef. But if it is called beef dinner, or beef entree, or beef recipe, the minimum drops to 25%. If the label says with beef, the product needs only 3% beef. And if it says beef flavor, the manufacturer only needs a detectable amount. A dog food called chicken dinner with beef could legally be 72% filler, 25% chicken, and 3% beef. Now here's where the labels get even more deceptive. Pet food ingredients are listed in descending order by weight, and manufacturers know that you are scanning for a meat protein in the first position. So they split cheap filler ingredients into multiple subcategories to push them down the list. A product that is 50% corn and 10% chicken can list the corn as corn, corn bran, corn germ meal, corn gluten, and corn gluten meal. Each fraction appears small on its own, and suddenly chicken rises to the number one spot. You think you are buying a chicken-based food. In reality, you are buying a corn-based food with a thin coating of flavoring sprayed on at the end of production. That spray is an ingredient called animal digest, which AAFCO defines as a material resulting from the chemical or enzymatic breakdown of clean animal tissue. It does not specify the species. And there is another trick. When the label lists chicken as the first ingredient, that chicken is weighed raw, including all its moisture. Fresh chicken is about 80% water. After the kibble is cooked and dried, that chicken has lost most of its weight and has dropped far below the grain ingredients in actual concentration. But the label is designed so you never figure that out, and the deception does not stop at the bag. It follows you into the veterinary clinic. Mars, the company that makes Pedigree and Royal Canin and IAMS, also happens to be the largest owner of veterinary clinics in the United States. Mars owns Banfield Pet Hospital with over 1,000 locations inside PetSmart stores. Mars owns VCA Animal Hospitals, another 1,000 plus clinics. Mars owns Blue Pearl Emergency Veterinary Centers, and Mars owns Antech Diagnostics, the laboratory that processes blood work for more than half of the veterinary hospitals in the country. In total, Mars employs more than 9% of all companion animal veterinarians in America. The company that makes the food also owns the clinic where you bring your sick pet and owns the lab that runs the tests. A Bloomberg investigation found that VCA was sending veterinarians monthly printouts with sales targets for products and procedures. Mars paid $9.1 billion to acquire VCA in 2017, and the Federal Trade Commission required Mars to sell only 12 clinics before approving the deal. 12 out of over 2,000. In most states, laws prevent corporations from owning medical practices for humans. Those laws do not apply to veterinary medicine. So when your vet recommends a prescription diet, there may be a financial incentive woven into that recommendation that you cannot see. So if the entire system is engineered to extract money from you while keeping you confused about what you are actually feeding your pet, what can you do about it? The answer starts with understanding that you have more power than the industry wants you to believe, but you have to know where to look. The first step is to stop shopping by brand name and start reading the actual ingredient panel with new eyes. Look for foods that list a specific name protein and a specific name protein meal in the first two positions. You want to see words like chicken meal or salmon meal, not generic terms like meat meal, animal byproducts, or poultry byproduct meal. Those generic terms are red flags because they can legally include rendered material from unspecified animal sources. If the ingredient panel contains more than 2 grain or starch sources in the top 5 positions, that food is probably grain-based, regardless of what the marketing on the front of the package says. and watch the ingredient list for splitting. If you see corn, corn gluten meal, and corn bran all listed separately, mentally combine them. That combined total is probably the real #1 ingredient, not the chicken listed at the top. A quick rule of thumb is to count how many times a single plant source appears under different names. If corn or rice shows up more than twice in the first 10 ingredients, you are looking at a grain product with a protein garnish. But reading labels is not enough when you do not know who is actually making the food. That brings us to the second step, which is to research the manufacturer, not the brand. Many premium brands do not own a single production facility. They contract out to co-packers, which means your $60 bag might be coming off the same line as a $12 store brand with different labels slapped on at the end. Companies like The Farmer's Dog, Just Food for Dogs, and Freshpet have built their business models around transparency and controlling their own supply chain. They are not perfect, but they represent a fundamentally different approach than the co-manufactured commodity model. Small regional brands that own their own kitchens and can tell you exactly where their chicken was raised are worth more than any billion-dollar label with a picture of a wolf on the bag. Look for a phone number on the packaging and call it. Ask where the food is manufactured and whether the company owns the facility. If they cannot or will not answer that question, that tells you everything you need to know. The third step, and this is the one the industry truly does not want you to hear, is to consider moving away from ultra-processed kibble entirely. Kibble was invented as a convenience product in the 1950s, not as the optimal diet for a carnivore. The extrusion process that creates those uniform little pellets requires temperatures above 200 degrees, which degrades many naturally occurring vitamins and amino acids. The manufacturer then sprays synthetic nutrients back onto the pellet at the end to meet the minimum AAFCO requirements. Fresh food, lightly cooked food, or even simply adding real protein and vegetables to your current rotation can dramatically improve the quality of your pet's diet without requiring a complete overhaul. And here is the detail that should put the entire industry into perspective. In 2023, the University of Helsinki published a study using data from over 7,000 dogs and found that puppies fed an ultra-processed kibble diet were 61 to 85% more likely to develop inflammatory bowel disease as adults compared to puppies fed raw or minimally processed diets. The pet food industry spent decades telling you that kibble is a complete and balanced diet. The emerging science says that claim deserves serious scrutiny. Remember where we started. Americans spend over $152 billion a year on their pets, and the vast majority of that money flows to two corporations that have built an empire on the illusion of choice. 94 million households trust the label on the bag without ever questioning who made it, where it was made, or what the words on that label actually mean. The pet food industry is counting on you to keep doing exactly that. Now you know the 3 things they do not want you to know. Read the ingredients, research the manufacturer, and rethink the kibble. Your pet cannot read the label, but you can. If you found this eye-opening, hit subscribe so you never miss another deep dive like this one.